Hi, in today's video we are going to turn several bottle stoppers analyzing the grain direction as well as other design aspects. Hi my friends, how are you? I hope everybody is fine. My name is Daniel Vilarino. Welcome to my YouTube channel. In the last video we saw how the direction of the grain in a piece of wood that is used for spindle turning affects the visual impact of that piece. In today's video I would like to use two of those examples for two different bottle stoppers. The first one I am going to do with this chestnut oak, and as you can see the grain direction goes like that. So basically when it is in the lathe, this is the rotation axis and the grain is perpendicular to the rotation axis. The second one is this piece of ambrosia maple. You can see the stain of the ambrosia beetle, fungi that generates those stains in the maple over there. And in this particular case, if this is the rotation axis, the grain runs parallel to the rotation axis. So those are two different examples of grain direction. And I would like to talk about a couple of aspects of the design that are very important. The first is a practical aspect, and is that when you have a situation like this in which the grain runs perpendicular, you have to make sure that you don't make too thin the design in any place, because if you thin too much the design, you will create a weak spot where the piece can break easily, because the direction of the grain is like this and you can crack that along the direction of the grain. However, in this case where the grain runs parallel, you can go pretty thin in some parts of the design without problem, because the grain direction gives strength to the piece and flexibility, and it will not break that easily. So that's one aspect. The second aspect is a more utilitarian one, which means that when you close your fingers on the bottle stoppers to grab it and pull it out or push it in the bottle mouth, basically you need something that you can grab the bottle stopper easily. So there has to be some part of the bottle stopper that has a shape that will allow you to do that. So that's the other aspect that we will see in this video. Those two bottle stoppers are today's video. I hope you enjoy it. Let's get to work. In the threaded bottle stopper chuck, I screw in the chestnut oak blank that has the grain direction running perpendicular to the lathe rotation axis. I make sure that the circular area that the Forstner bit left will sit well against the flat part of the chuck. See yellow arrow. While I rough the blank, I will keep pressure with the tailstock live center because it is safer. A subscriber asked how did the grain direction react to a roughing with a roughing gouge. It is similar to how it works with a skew chisel, so I decided to show it in this video. I try to keep contact between the bevel and the rotating piece. For the roughing, I am going to rotate at about 1800 RPMs. As you can see, while the blank is still sort of square, mainly when the edge goes against the grain, it will produce some tear out, and once in a while some shards will be flying out. But do not let this to disappoint you. Once the blank gets more and more rounded, this tear out will decrease. As you can see, the tear out happens when the edge goes against the fiber. That happens in two areas of the blank located 180 degrees apart. It is always a good practice to keep the tool rest close to the blank, so the point the tool is supported is closer to the piece and there is more stability. After a few more passes, the situation has improved. There are still some tear-outs, but they are mainly consequence of the first roughing cuts done at the start. But for a small piece missing in the end on the chuck side, the piece is finally round. I'm going to use a spindle gouge to shape the bottle stopper, and as you will see, the worst is behind. From this moment on, I will get just normal shavings. An important consideration when designing bottle stoppers where the grain direction is perpendicular to the rotation axis is that you should not thin too much the piece in any part of the design. Wood breaks easily along the grain, as you can see when you chop wood to make firewood. So in this type of bottle stoppers, a part that is too thin will generate a weakness point. I have made some soft curves, beads and coves that give the piece an ergonomic aspect, making easier to grab it when you need to put the stopper in or out of the bottle mouth. I eliminate the small dimple left by the live center. To finish the piece, I will sand it with finer and finer grit sandpapers, starting with 80, then 120, 150, 240, 320, 400 and finally 600. Every so often I will alternate the lathe rotation direction. This will make for a better sanding, particularly in the end grain area. After the 320 grit, I am going to soak the surface in alcohol. Sometimes during the sanding, the ends of the fiber get flattened. The alcohol raises the grain ends again, making the sanding with finer sandpapers easier. Besides, it gives us a preview of how the piece is going to look like. And applying just a bit of friction or additional sanding, the alcohol will evaporate with the generated heat. As finished, I will apply friction polish. I will apply a layer, then let it dry a little, then apply another coat, and so on until I achieve the desired shine. To generate enough heat by friction, I am rotating at about 2700 RPMs. Here you can see the result. Really a beautiful grain. Now I can unscrew it from the chuck. I am going to put 3 or 4 little drops of CA glue to secure better the hardware and screw it in the threaded perforation. And this way I finish this chestnut oak bottle stopper. It is a simple and utilitarian design. Here the star really is a beautiful wood grain. For our second example, I will screw in the bottle stopper chuck an ambrosia maple blank. The roughing using the roughing gouge follows the same principle that in the previous example, with a fundamental difference: the grain direction. In this case, is parallel to the lathe rotation axis, and therefore you get almost no grain tear out. I perform a single pass with a skew chisel to achieve an even better and smoother surface. Since the grain runs parallel to the lathe rotation axis, in that direction the wood has more strength and flexibility. So, in this bottle stopper, I can make thinner design elements. I am going to shape a sort of base. This will be followed by a convex shape, almost spherical, which will be followed by a thin ending. As you can see, I am showing the turning in accelerated fashion. In this video I want to concentrate more in the design elements than in the turning itself. That kind of spheric shape, besides its decorative aspect, has also a functional aspect, because it will allow you to grab the bottle stopper to put in or take it out of the bottle mouth. This shape is many times known as the onion, because it looks like an onion that still has some leaves coming out of the bulb. Regarding the sanding, I would like to mention only a couple of important aspects. The first is not to use the coarser grits in the delicate and thin elements of the turning. The second is that you can fold the sandpaper to easily reach the bottom of the coat between the base and the spheric shape. Because of the grain direction, despite the thin area, there is no much risk of breaking there. Once again, I will give it finish using friction polish. I unscrew the piece from the bottle stopper chuck and only remains to put a few drops of CA glue and screw in the stainless steel hardware to complete the bottle stopper. I never tire admiring the grain of these ambrosia maple pieces. The third example is a piece of Bradford pear, with the grain running at 30 degrees from the lathe rotation axis. I apologize for my lack of dexterity in tracing the lines, but more or less you get the idea of the grain direction. I start truing up the piece using the roughing gouge. Only in the part where the gouge is cutting against the grain you can see a bit of tear out. There is a bit of tear out, but it is something that a skew chisel or a sharp spindle gouge can remove without problems. Regarding the design, the 30-degree grain angle does not represent a big departure from the grain parallel to the rotation axis. I can do relatively thin elements without fear of leaving a weak section. In this case, I will turn it to give it a shape similar to an amphora. It will have a wider base towards the chuck side, from there a sort of deep cove, followed by what will be the amphora's body, and from there its neck. As you can appreciate, the gouge does not have any problems in making good cuts with a 30-degree grain direction. This tilt of the grain is enough to produce a nice change in how the piece will look, but not too much as to cause severe problems in the spindle work. I have, for its most part, finished with the side spindle work, so I have removed the tailstock to work in the amphora's mouth. When I start these cuts, I have the gouge's position close, so the sharp edge will not skid back and allow me to complete the cut without issues. Despite being a relatively small piece, details are important and they complement the rest of the work. Here I am highlighting a separation between the neck and the mouth of the amphora. In the tailstock I mounted a Jacob's chuck with a bit that will go through nicely through the thin neck part without weakening that area. It is not my intention to hollow in the piece, but to give the appearance that it is a hollow form, and the perforation will generate that effect. I have made the rim a bit thinner in the mouth of the piece, and I am going to work in the transition between the internal curve and the perforation I made. The finish will be similar to the previous two bottle stoppers. I just wanted to mention that to sand inside the perforation I wrapped a band of sandpaper around a pencil to work in the inside. And here you can see the finished bottle stopper after I added some glue and screwed in the stainless steel hardware. As you can see, the 30-degree grain direction looks very nice in this piece. Here you can see a couple of stills of the bottle stoppers made during this video. And in this final image you can see the 10 bottle stoppers I have made in these past days. All have the characteristic that they are easy to grab, to put in or pull out of the bottle mouth. In the video description I will include the type of goods that I used to make each of these. Okay, my friends, here you have the first one in chestnut oak. You can see that in this case the axis direction is like this, the grain direction is perpendicular. You can see the rings of growing of the tree right there, beautiful grain, and the shape is such that you can grab it easily and either push or pull without problem, so that's an element of design. In this particular case I try not to thin too much in any part of the bottle stopper because the grain direction could make there a place where it could break easily. So that's for the 90-degree. Now for the parallel to the turning axis I have this ambrosia maple one, and again in this particular case I did a thin element, and it doesn't matter because the grain direction is like this, so this won't break easily. It has more flexibility because of the grain direction. Again, this is a shape that you can grab easily or push in or out of the bottle without any problem, and beautiful good as well. I really love it. And then I didn't mention it at the beginning of the video, but I did this one with Bradford pear, and you can see this is a 30-degree angle grain direction. You can see it there, and this is like a shape of like a jar. In this particular case you can make thin elements, no problem, because the 30-degree angle is pretty much similar to the one that is parallel to the rotation axis. And in this particular case also you have a form that you can grab easily or push in or out of the bottle. So there you have the 3 different bottle stoppers. I hope you enjoyed the video. If that's the case, please don't forget to mark the like button below, make comments, and if you haven't subscribed yet to my channel, please do so. There will appear the button to facilitate the subscription. And it will be until the next one. Cheers!